Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 5:06 on O'Connor and Company. It's a Friday morning. Thank you for joining us. Just wanted to make sure we had the cure plan. I don't know why I didn't hear it first, but we do. It's a tradition. This would not have worked. Friday would not have worked if we didn't start with Friday, I'm in Love.
That's right.
Coming up at 7:05, Mark Apoletta is Senior Fellow at the Center for Renewing America and co-editor of the book Created Equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words. This now new reign of hellfire against Justice Alito because he's daring to fly a historic flag from the American Revolution at his house. We'll talk about the full-on assault on conservative justices and, frankly, the institution of the Supreme Court. At 8:05, I've been wanting to talk to him all week. Kash Patel, former federal prosecutor.
All right.
Talk about the Trump trial, and he was also at that Trump rally yesterday in the Bronx, I think. I thought I saw him there. 8:50, I know he was up in New York this week because he was supporting Trump at one of the trial dates. 8:15, our friend Mike Litterist from the National Park Service, talk about Memorial Day events this weekend. And then at 8:35, our Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. I'm Larry O'Connor, and there she is. Let's hear it. We got to get our Friday off right, Patrice.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Thank you. This has really become an institution now.
It is.
Your
and
pronouncement
guess what?
that it is a happy Friday.
And guess what makes it a little bit more exciting? Monday is Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Which is a three-day weekend for many folks.
It is a long weekend, and for those of you who are coming in for your half day of work, we applaud you and we're excited for you. So, Patrice, we were just going through this. You know, we go through our pre-show process, and you were spending a little time on this story out of CNN about how retailers are having challenges, business owners are having challenges, obviously, because of the crime issue, and they're trying to interact with governments who are recognizing, we got some crime problems. Despite what you're hearing from Joe Biden and the Democrats and the prosecutors and everything, that obviously we've got some major crime problems. But boy, the way they're going about figuring out solutions is a fascinating government. It's a perfect example of how government works.
Well, this is fascinating. It is the headline story on CNN.com right now. That's why it caught my eye. And the headline reads, "Retailers use extreme tactics to help fight crime rings." Right. So what you have going on here is that retailers are tired of waiting for police to not investigate, maybe because they're investigating other more violent crimes. And so they're taking matters into their own hands. We're talking about big retailers like Home Depot, Target. They are themselves investigating these crime rings. They're tracking license plates. They're scanning security cameras, going to the suspected, illegal retailers where all of their stolen merchandise is then being resold, or I guess the term is fenced.
Well, they've like set up their own
information.
These criminals have set up their own mini stores, basically, operating out of warehouses. So they're going to Home Depot, they're stealing their stuff, and then they're setting it up and then selling it criminally.
And reselling it.
They're
They're
very industrious. They love capitalism, these thieves.
Well, that's fine, except you can't take stolen goods to do that with, right?
But I guess if no one's going to stop them, Patrice.
Well, here's the thing. So now somebody is stopping them. And these are these big retailers who do have the resources to be able to investigate themselves, probably hire their own security staff to track down the assailants, to track down where the merchandise is going and being resold. Then they package all this information up, this investigation, and hand it over to the local police, probably begging, saying, "Will you please find these people, shut down this ring, and lock them up so that they don't keep stealing from us." And it's important because retail theft is on the rise, costing over $100 billion according to the National Retail Federation last year. And it's only getting worse. And so if you're a retailer with the means, it actually makes sense for you to investigate the crimes in your stores and then hope that the police will follow through.
This is and so all of this investigation, the discovery of this underground sort of mini Home Depot that is the shelves are stocked with goods stolen from Home Depot and then sold to people who are buying cheap stolen goods. The entire investigation, the entire discovery, the entire process of figuring this out was done by private security hired by Home Depot to get to the bottom of all of these thefts, right? Yeah, and I want to fill in the blanks of some of the things in this CNN article, because there's this one statement that sort of sticks out to you. A lot of times, local and state resources don't have the capacity to investigate these crimes. Wait, what?
Isn't that what they exist to do?
This is in San Jose, California, where the taxes are the highest in the nation. And you cannot tell me that they don't have the resources. Let me fill in the blanks here. This is California. In California, about 8 years ago, they passed a measure, and the thought process behind this measure was written by liberals, and the whole idea was the criminal justice system is broken, the criminal justice system is racist, we are incarcerating people, it's the cycle of incarceration, and we need to break the bonds of that. And besides, people are only stealing because they're desperate, because, capitalist scum who run this country have been keeping them in poverty. So the new law was thefts of stolen goods valuing under $1,000 would be treated as a misdemeanor. So if you steal something and it's not worth $1,000, well, sure, misdemeanors are still crimes, but it'll be tantamount to a slap on the wrist. And it won't be a felony on your record, right? Well, what ended up happening because of that law is that police departments and law enforcement in general said, yeah, we're not going to investigate that crime if it's just a misdemeanor. Where our focus is felonies. It's going to get backburnered. So, of course, we see these videos of people going into CVS or Home Depot or wherever it is, taking garbage bags and just filling them with stuff off the shelves and then walking out, and no one does anything because it doesn't total $1,000. But Patrice, clearly what's happened here at this Home Depot is you go in every day and steal $900 worth of goods. Yes. And over the course of, 100 days, you've got $90,000 worth of product. Yeah. And now you've got inventory. It accumulates. And that's what this crime ring has done. And the police, forget about not having the resources. The police have just said, yeah, the laws are set up in such a way that there's no reason to go investigate these.
Well, and think about from a consumer perspective what that means for you. That is the reason why in so many stores you can't get some deodorant off the shelf. You have to go in and ask a employee, a minimum wage employee, to get the lock-in key to get the key to open the lock for you to get some deodorant, a bar of soap.
Razors.
And then razors. So there's the inconvenience aspect, but then there's frankly just the cost aspect. When you are paying more because these retailers now have to increase their prices to cover their investigations into these organized theft rings, and not to mention, I believe they're considering arming staff with body cameras to capture footage that can be used in these investigations. So there is a cost, and the ultimate cost is the loss of jobs and the loss of these stores, when in a lot of local communities where they can't afford to go to a big box retailer, they have to go to their local CVS to get medicine. The stores entirely shut down because they just can't afford overall what it means to have so much theft compound daily. This lays at the feet of bad policy making. And I hope voters see that. I hope they see that stupid policies have stupid consequences.
You're right, and I hope voters see it too. But you know what will help is if the media sees it, because the fact that this story is the government is not doing the basics of law and order and public safety that you think you're getting with your tax dollars, especially in one of the highest tax states, California. Retailers have decided, okay, instead of shut down, maybe we'll protect ourselves. We'll investigate the crimes ourselves. And then the headline from the CNN is, retailers use extreme tactics to help fight crime. It's not extreme. They're doing basic investigation and policing that the government refuses to do. And, oh, by the way, that's the government's basic function. And that's how upside down we are. It's 5:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Now, so that's California. where the retailers have decided, listen, we're not going to shut down. We're going to stay in business. We're going to investigate these crimes ourselves. And now CNN is saying, look at these extreme tactics. All right, now let's flip over to the East Coast, Philadelphia.
Okay.
A lot of crime in Philadelphia, right? A lot of crime. And police are, they're trying to get a handle on the crime and on the issues and everything. So they've got a great idea because the business owners in Philadelphia are turning to the police, turning to their local officials saying, you're killing us. We got this crime. There's shoplifting. There's violence. You got to help us out. So they've come up with a really great idea. Punish the businesses. Listen.
We have watched and witnessed business owners allow for loitering to take place, smoking to take place, dumping to take place.
The bill would impact businesses like Cali and Rodriguez mini markets. Right now, both stay open 24 hours a day. Neither business owner was around to talk with us, but customer John Ricketts offered his thoughts.
Maybe a little more police patrol. That may help.
Ricketts says he visits Rodriguez Mini Market regularly and he's never seen the alleged nuisance activity. Ricketts thinks shutting the business down overnight would do the community a disservice.
I would not bother or disturb this store because this store really serves a lot of people. A lot of people come here from a lot of different neighborhoods knowing that they can come here and it's open, they can eat.
Gas stations, restaurants with liquor licenses, and drive-thrus would be exempt from the curfew. Neighbor Shanita Starr says she's aware of the problems in this area.
That's why I don't come outside. I don't know what goes on in particular places, but I don't come outside because it's too dangerous out here.
And while some business owners on the Strip support the proposed change,
there is no reason to be on the streets by midnight.
Councilmember Phillips knows it will not be supported by all.
What I say to those businesses that may not be happy is the fact, how about be a resident in this area where you got to deal with the loud music, where you guys see drugs walking across the street.
So this is an elected official angry about loud music on the streets, drugs on the streets, and he thinks that the reason that it's happening and the way to crack down on it is these stores shouldn't be open 24 hours because and you heard him at the beginning, the retailers aren't doing anything to stop the criminal activity. But the customer has a better idea.
Customer John Ricketts offered his thoughts.
Maybe a little more police patrol.
Hey, I got an idea. Instead of shutting, we've got all this crime activity going on the streets and the stores are open 24 hours. So let's shut down the stores that are open 24 hours. I don't know. Maybe you send the police out and arrest the people doing the criminal activity. But no, everyone must be punished.
Well, and when people are arrested for, let's say, loitering, what is the penalty? If they are turned right back out with a slap on the wrist or no slap at all, then obviously they're going to continue to loiter, and police are not going to, enforce laws against loitering. But you know what? This is asinine. And
Yes,
it really is. You are telling the small businesses who are trying to keep their doors open to service the community. Because, by the way, while I get that a lot of good things don't happen after 11 p.m., there are people who are trying to go from work to going home from work. There are people who need to stop and get a late night meal because they've come off a very late shift. These are the people who are going to get impacted. There are dads who've run out of milk or run out of diapers and have to go outside at 11 p.m. because the newborn needs milk from the local grocer. What are you saying to those people? They're part of the community. Do their needs not matter? And frankly, why does a small business have to pay the price for doing what it's supposed to do, which is to stay in business and serve the community? They are not police. They are not deputized. They frankly are not the ones who are supposed to be enforcing loitering laws and rules. And when they do, then you have a bunch of activists who come out and jump and scream about racism.
That's
that
right.
they are that the small business owners are the ones who are hurting the community when they're the ones who are helping it. So
Bingo.
ridiculous.
Bingo. That's what happened. We have these laws on the books for a reason. We have loitering laws. We have public nuisance laws. We have loud music laws. We have criminal vagrancy laws that are supposed to be against people sleeping on the streets. When the police are enforcing those laws, it makes for a better community. So the police can say, hey, you guys are hanging out on the street corner. You're up to no good. You move along or we're going to arrest you. And then if they do, activists come out and say, oh, he was arrested for standing on the corner being black. No,
exactly.
The police use their judgment. They make the community safer. And so instead of enforcing those laws, instead of hiring, why don't you a little more police patrol, as customer John Ricketts said in that report? Well, no, they can't afford more police patrol. You know why? Because they've defunded the police. They've spent their money, instead of hiring cops to patrol the neighborhoods, they spent their money on hiring counselors and social workers. And the DEI department at the police, that costs a lot of money. Those people have college degrees to enforce DEI. So, we can't hire a cop. And so now what are they going to do? They're going to shut down businesses. Now, I do want to say in Philadelphia, the gas stations, restaurants with liquor licenses, and also drive-through restaurants, those would be exempt from the curfew. But still, I've got an idea, Philly. Why don't you try hiring cops and letting them do their job? Try that first.
Well, but think about then who gets shut down. It is the immigrant owner, small business owner who owns the 24-hour 7-Eleven, the 24-hour local grocer. It's the Hispanic. It's the bodega. It's all these small businesses that, frankly, are the livelihoods and the local employers for a lot of the people in the community. So you're telling them, they have to shut down at 11 p.m., but the McDonald's with their drive-through gets to stay, and the liquor people with a liquor license, restaurants.
All the trouble,
clubs, they get to stay open. Oh, and by the way, isn't there a lot of crime in front of clubs at midnight, at 1 a.m., at 2 a.m.? But we're not addressing that.
That's right.
It's just ridiculous.
And again, the city councilman, the very beginning of this report, it says it all.
We have watched and witnessed business owners allow for loitering to take place.
The businesses are allowing it to take place. It's not their job. They're a business. That's what the cops are supposed to do. And so we're going to shut down the businesses. Oh, ridiculous. And then they'll complain that there's no stores in these neighborhoods and the economy is down and there's no jobs. Oh, Patrice. Patrice, if only we were in charge, we could fix it all.
I'm telling you.
524.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company this Friday morning. Thank you so much for being part of the show here. At 7:05, Mark Paoletta on the attacks on Samuel Alito at the Supreme Court. 8:05, Kash Patel on Trump in the Bronx. 8:15, Mike Litterist on this weekend's Memorial Day festivities in the National Mall. And then at 8:35, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares. That's a loaded show, and it's always loaded on a Friday when we've got Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning and happy Friday.
Well, here's how Norah O'Donnell delivered the news yesterday to her viewers on CBS News.
An American soldier is in critical condition at an Israeli hospital tonight, injured in a forklift accident while working on the floating pier off the coast of the Gaza Strip. 2 other soldiers were also hurt in a separate accident, but they are expected to return to duty. And humanitarian aid is once again flowing from that U.S.-made pier, according to the United Nations. Deliveries were halted over the weekend after a convoy of trucks was looted by Palestinians desperate for food and supplies.
Well, that's one way to report the looting of those trucks. Another way is to say that militant groups had intercepted some of those trucks. Yes, some of the trucks full of aid coming off of the pier were stopped by swarms of desperate, needy Gazans who have been neglected by their government, Hamas. They elected them, but that's what their government has been doing. They've been taking all of the aid for themselves. And what they describe as militant groups. Gee, who would be a militant group, an armed military-style militant group in Gaza? That would be Hamas.
In Gaza.
Yeah, that would be Hamas. And Hamas has intercepted many of these aid trucks coming from the pier, too. But let's be clear. The United States has spent $320 million and committed 1,000 members of the U.S. military to construct this floating pier over the last 2 months. And trucks of aid have been delivered from the pier to aid stations, or at least to a warehouse that then is supposed to coordinate the distribution of aid. But it's, of course, the corrupt UN and UNRWA who is responsible for distributing that. And we know that they are in league with Hamas. So this entire escapade is set up for failure, or at the very least, corruption. And now we have a service member critically injured in a forklift accident. And think about that. Your son or your daughter decides to sign up and join the military and go fight to protect our freedoms and protect our allies. And this commander-in-chief sends them to aid the side of the war that is fighting against our ally, Israel, to set up this floating pier. And then your kid is critically injured in a forklift accident doing Biden's diplomatic efforts for the people of Gaza to undermine Israel. The whole thing is an outrage.
You really wonder. Well, it is an outrage, and you wonder why it was worth it if you've lost your child in such a freak accident. Now, these things happen. Casualties, unfortunately, happen in workplaces all the time. But this is probably, it may have been avoidable. And I think the larger point, though, is just the mess that the United States has gotten itself into. I'd also like to point out, though, UNRWA, the UNRWA, which unfortunately we've also here found some interesting other news there. The bodies of 4 hostages were discovered in a tunnel underneath the UNRWA building. That is disturbing, Larry. It is disturbing because, we don't, I guess more information needs to come out about who these hostages were, how long they had been there, when they potentially had been killed. But I can't help but think that this is another example of how the United Nations and their local chapter, their local personnel and establishment have been part and parcel, a part of Hamas's attack, vicious, brutal attack on October 7th, and they continue to be part of the hostage the capturing of hostages. I mean, how is it possible that under their building was a tunnel where these bodies were found? A tunnel probably used to shuttle hostages from place to place.
Right. UNRWA, the UN agency that is supposed to be aiding the people of Gaza, they're working with Hamas. They're working with the terrorists.
Yes.
Why else would there be a tunnel under their building? Why else would there be hostages, dead hostages, being held in their building? And you just heard that there were more dead hostages discovered during our news announcement there at the bottom of the hour. And UNRWA, of course, but we have built this pier to deliver aid, and then we hand it off to UNRWA. And they take it in the trucks to a warehouse, and who the hell knows if any of it ends up in the hands of the people who need it. And now we've got a service member who is critically injured in the process. We've committed over $300 million to build this thing. And here's something that's incredibly noteworthy that everybody needs to understand. President Joe Biden, the commander-in-chief and the leader of the free world, and the person who runs the executive branch of the U.S. government, and for all intents and purposes since the founding of our nation, has the basic control of the U.S. foreign policy. He is the head of state. He is the person. You don't want these things decided by committee. You want your president to be able to determine foreign policy things like this. When push comes to shove, Joe Biden decided that if we were going to commit U.S. troops to a project in this engagement in Israel, between Israel defending itself and the Hamas terrorists trying to destroy them, he decided, let's send 1,000 of our men and women in uniform and $320 million of our U.S. dollars to Hamas, to the bad guys, to the people who are responsible for invading and killing over 1,200 innocent people. He didn't send these troops to help Israel. He didn't send $320 million to. In fact,
That's a great point, Larry.
He's halted aid to Israel, and so instead they're committed to helping build. And I know, it's humanitarian. It's for the citizens. There's a great way to help the citizens of Gaza. Hamas, the terrorists, can surrender and release the hostages. That's all they've got to do.
Thank you.
And all of that aid, there wouldn't be any need for this. There wouldn't be any need for anyone to be critically injured like this. On this Memorial Day weekend, our prayers are with the family of that poor service member who was driving a forklift, trying to get aid because Joe Biden decided he was going to pick sides in this war. And now he's facing a critical, life-threatening injury. It didn't have to happen. 540.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, if some can get $35,000 for student loans, why can't we all just get $35,000? 9 a.m. on WMAL.
That's a fair question, Mr. Plant. The fake outrage spurred on by a New York Times article focusing on Justice Samuel Alito excuse me, and his family home, where at various times over the course of the last several years, a flag linked to the American Revolution has been flying. It's called the Appeal to Heaven flag. It's a pine tree, a white background, and it says an appeal to heaven. It was used by patriots during the Revolutionary War. It is one of the many flags and banners used by the American colonists in their struggle against the King of England. And it's the stupidest and most outrageous story that you will see, and that's saying something in the mainstream media about the Supreme Court. Of course, they have been going after Alito and Clarence Thomas and demanding that they recuse themselves from certain cases involving January 6th. And as we mentioned yesterday on the program, the whole idea behind the outrage is that this flag is linked to, well, the flag was displayed by some people during the January 6th event. By the way, you know what else was displayed during the January 6th riots? The American flag. You know what else was displayed? Trump campaign flags that say "Make America Great Again." MAGA hats. I mean, should everybody recuse themselves from anything if they display those banners? Actually, the Supreme Court or the New York Times would say yes. Yeah,
they absolutely would.
But one other thing before you jump in, Patrice, this flag was also displayed during Black Lives Matters protests. This flag was also displayed on marches on the Capitol by left-wing groups. An appeal to heaven is not... Listen, if the position of the radical political left or the secular New York Times activist media is that to make an appeal to heaven is a right-wing conservative message, go ahead and take that position. I would like to say that anyone in this country who wants their cause to be amplified should make an appeal to heaven. And I won't be as bigoted as the New York Times to think that only one political side of the equation appeals to heaven.
Yeah, obviously. Listen, this is much ado about nothing. They are literally looking for any way to take down another conservative Supreme Court justice. I guess Justice Clarence Thomas gets a little bit of a breather for the time being while the left is training its fire on Justice Alito. Here's what's interesting. So I see a tweet here from Shannon Bream, an X.com post. She said, "I spoke directly with Justice Alito about the flag story in the New York Times. In addition to what's in the story, he told me a neighbor on their street had an F Trump sign that was within 50 feet of where his children or where children await the school bus." You know, I mean, listen, the left they just cannot help themselves. They are bending over backwards to try to find any way to rebalance the power on the Supreme Court by invalidating the voice of different justices, removing the voices of different justices, and they're using January 6th, the rioters, as a pretext for it, and they're saying this flag was held up during January 6th, and so obviously they're trying to suggest that Justice Alito is a January 6th rioter or is going to be understanding of them if in case a case comes before them. I think folks should not get distracted by this story. Just as there have been, very strong advocates defending Justice Clarence Thomas, we need to be strong advocates in defending Justice Alito, because the left's end game is not to play fair. The left is not about trying to ensure that there is impartiality on the Supreme Court. Their end game is turning the Supreme Court left. That is it.
That's one end game. The other end game is to outlaw or shame or discriminate against patriotic symbols of American history. And we've seen them do this. They did this with the Gadsden flag, the yellow flag with the snake on it that says "Don't tread on me."
Yeah.
They tried to do this with the Betsy Ross American flag, if you remember right, saying that was a symbol of colonialism and racism and slavery. They try to warp American history in such a way that it immediately connects imagery of our founding to hate and bigotry. I got a question. I'm not a big fan of the rainbow flag. I think the rainbow flag stands for things that I disagree with. Should it be outlawed? Should it be, if somebody, I have no doubt that members of Congress And yes, even Supreme Court justices at any given time have displayed that rainbow flag. Should that mean that their political views should be banned or removed from polite society?
That they shouldn't decide cases regarding LGBTQ rights.
Absolute totalitarian tactics. Guess what? Leftists love to wear Che Guevara shirts. They love the hammer and sickle. They've got their symbolism. And by the way, I'm showing you literally extreme imagery that is mainstream in the political left or on college campuses. And I'm falling into the false trap of comparing those obvious extreme anti-freedom violent images like a hammer and sickle and Che Guevara to the Appeal to Heaven flag, which is pure. It is. There's nothing in any way whatsoever that should be shameful about the flying of that flag compared to the display of the hateful images that I just laid out. That this is exactly what they want to do. 45 members of Congress have sent a letter to Chief Justice Roberts, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, calling for Alito to recuse himself because of this flag, because a flag that is an American historic emblem.
No, because they're looking to silence another conservative voice, Larry. We know what it is.
That's all it is.
There's the process, and then there's the politics, and then and you are being a good steward of our Constitution, of our constitutional rights. But we're not up against folks like you, Larry. We're up against people who would rather silence us in any way.
And demonizing American history. And listen, I had some understanding and sympathy for the Confederate battle flag because guess what? That was literally a symbol of another nation, the Confederate States of America. They had their own constitution. They had their own government. That was their battle flag. This is an American flag, literally. And it is still being used in the state of Massachusetts as the banner for the state Navy. State ships that are part of the Massachusetts National Guard. They fly this flag as the banner on their ships. It's outrageous. Mark Paletta, who has been documenting the attack on our Supreme Court, will join us at 7:05. Right now it's 5:54.